I first want to thank everyone who attended today's meeting. It was a productive session with many representatives of federal entities as well as state entities as well as local here in Hartford. While we're experiencing record low crime throughout Connecticut, Hartford stands out as a notable exception, at least over the last few months, and we want to display the kind of leadership for our residents to convince them that Hartford can handle this, that it will handle it, and it will handle it with the support from federal and state authorities as well. Connecticut must be a strategic partner with the city to combat violence and the loss of life of our residents. Any loss of life in any community throughout Connecticut is unacceptable, and we won't stand for it. When we received the official request from the city last week, we immediately responded and have been engaged with city leaders ever since. I'm proud to say that we are offering even more resources than were requested by the mayor, and that's in part based on decisions that the two commissioners have made themselves. Starting last week, we added 4 additional state police detectives. Today, we will add 2 additional parole officers and 2 correctional staff to provide intelligence to the local police. We will also make monies available for a gun buyback program. We will add additional parole resources as requested, as well as supervisorial corrections staff. We will also offer Hartford additional technical resources to assist in tracking ex-offenders. Finally, the state will also fund, as I said, a gun buyback program to be run by Hartford. The city of Hartford hasn't gotten into this situation overnight. We know that additional help is just that, help in providing the services necessary to combat this spike in crime. I know that the residents of Hartford are tired of violence and are afraid, but they should know this. I stand committed and ready to work with the Hartford police officers and their elected officials to make sure that we can overcome these difficulties. We held today's meeting to ensure that our resources are being used as part of an overall strategy to help combat the violence, and I'm sure that when we're done and the mayor speaks, he'll be able to speak about that as well. I will implement a suggestion that the commissioner just made, and that is that we offer, or that the commissioners offer themselves for regular meetings with the authorities from Bridgeport, and we will make that possible as well, so that we can be updated on the efforts that are ongoing here in Hartford, and so that we can adjust any requirements that are needed. I think the citizenry would like to know what they can do, and there are several things that they can do. When a crime is committed, point law enforcement personnel in the right direction. The quicker authorities can identify and locate witnesses, the faster we can solve a crime. In other words, if you see something, say something, and please say it to a police officer. The Connecticut State Police also operates a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week confidential text messaging hotline. You can text TIP 711 plus your message to crimes, which is the number 274637. We'll advertise that more and get more of that to you. The Hartford Police Department also operates a Hartford Crime Stoppers, an anonymous hotline that can be reached by calling 860-722-TIPS. That's 8477. Next, residents can safely remove unwanted guns from their home, and you can turn in a weapon, no question asked, at any time to any state police troop barracks, of which there is one in Hartford, including Troop H specifically on Washington Street in downtown Hartford. You can also safely dispose of unused prescription drugs. The Department of Consumer Protection accepts unused prescription drugs. Check with DCP website to find the nearest drop-off location in your area. The bottom line is this: we are going to do everything we can to combat the unwanted and isolated violence in the city of Hartford. We will continue to have local, state, and federal partners coordinate a strategy to protect our capital city, and I want to thank you all for that. Did either of you want to add anything? With that, I'll take a few questions.
Can you tell us how long you'll be able to stay committed with manpower and resources?
I think that, you know, it's our intention to see this through. This is obviously a spike. Overall crime is down about 2%. Homicides have doubled for a comparable period of time, and shootings are up. So we're going to stay with us for a period of time until we can put things back to where they need to be.
Will there be uniformed troopers?
I don't have an immediate answer for you. Most of these folks, actually of the four, we're really talking about 3 investigators plus a sergeant himself, an investigator as well, or herself. So we haven't made the assignment, or it's ongoing. Okay, ongoing. Thank you.
This means attribute this spike in violence to. I mean, it seems that some of your resources are targeted, you know, ex-offenders.
You know, I think, you know, it's somewhat isolated, so we're trying to drill down. I'm sure Hartford's trying to drill down. I know they are, because we talked about that to understand these things. Spikes in crime are not isolated to any one city. They can take place, and sometimes one homicide leads to another homicide, or bad language and words lead to other bad language and words that ultimately leads in a shooting and in some cases a homicide. It's more. It appears to be somewhat related to behaviors begetting other behaviors.
It's my understanding that the shooting task force has been cut as well with some of the members, and when it was first implemented in 2011.
It was first implemented in 8, re-implemented in 11, and more resources are going to it. And again, we play a supporting role to the local police, but the federal authorities are also going to step up their participation.
Were resources reduced by the state?
I don't know. Do you know what the answer to that is?
Over time, the total number has gone up, but the state trooper participation was reduced. Important thing to remember is one of the key contributions that we bring to that effort is to ensure that should a suspect cross over the city line, there's continuity in the prosecution, and our presence ensures that.
So the total number of people working are more. We play in a supporting role, as has been described.
More supporting role than a direct role.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a manpower problem, Governor? So if you add
you know,
officers, does it necessarily mean that a reduction in violence?
You know, I don't think it necessarily means that. We're hopeful that it does mean that. You know, over the last 2 years, the state of Connecticut has contributed about $4.9 million worth of services in Hartford to help reduce crime, and that was along with, obviously, a much larger budget within Hartford, was showing signs of success. That has been disrupted this year, and so we're trying to focus on making sure we can beat that back.
And what did you learn from the city? You called the meeting because you wanted to learn how the city essentially deployed, what its strategy was. What did you learn on that?
I think, well, I'll let the chief talk about his own strategy, but they're doing a lot of analytical work. They're trying to understand the interrelatedness of some of these incidences, and I think the answer I gave to the prior question was in part in keeping with what the chief had to say.
Are you considering adding more if necessary? More?
Well, you know, we're state government. We want to play a supporting role to help our local governments accomplish what they need to accomplish. I'm a former mayor. I'm also a former prosecutor. I understand these things. We don't want to step on their toes. We want to play a supportive role. Everything that we've been asked to do as of the letter, we're actually doing. With respect to the federal folks, they came to the table today, and we'll be adding some additional resources as well, and you might want to follow up with them in the next day or so. One more.
So to be clear, there are no troopers patrolling the streets or any plan for that? It's more on the investigative side?
Yeah, well, yes and no. I'm not being difficult. We actually do stand side by side at a number of special events, troopers to local police officers in support of celebrations, events, parades, use of the riverfront. So that's the fireworks, for instance. So we are here. What we're talking about and the resources that we have been specifically requested to lend, which is additional investigators as well as correction personnel, we are honoring and have already honored those requests.
Do you ever worry that this could be a Band-Aid?
I'm sorry.
Well, in the sense of by doing this, and if it'll continue, it's a stopgap measure,
No,
that the problems underlying are not going to go away?
No, listen, I want to be very clear. The state of Connecticut has its own requirements with respect to the safety of overall citizenry, our highways, and the like, prosecution of cases. Having said that, there are, from time to time, special circumstances. And in those special circumstances, when called upon, we will step up our efforts in support of local efforts. We will not take over local efforts. We will not be the primary body responsible for those things. That is a local function and best, quite frankly, delivered on a local basis, where police officers are working a beat, have established relationships and the like. Having said that, the mayor reached out. He's made specific requests. We are on all of the requests that he's made to us. We are, that is the portion of government that I lend some support of or supervision of, we are honoring and actually exceeding those requests. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Do we? Thank you. I first want to thank the governor and lieutenant governor for arranging for this meeting. It was a very productive meeting in which the requests that we made were accommodated. There are a couple of additional requests which we will continue to work on. Hartford is a city, but it is unlike any other city. We are the capital city. And as a capital city, there's a certain fluidity between our community and surrounding communities. Hartford also has a special set of challenges that are not experienced by other towns and cities in the state. So as we look for short-term approaches to bring down the violence, we must be mindful that we have a special set of circumstances in our city that impact opportunity. Opportunity which oftentimes lead to people engaging in the sort of conduct that we're trying now to eliminate. Having said that, I think that these challenges necessitate a collaborative approach where the leadership of surrounding communities and the state are present in terms of having a more tactical and strategic approach to how we deploy our resources. Chief has been very clear that this is not a problem that we can arrest ourselves out of, and that it requires very focused, strategic attention in order to do that. Chief will go into more detail in terms of some of the items that we were agreed upon today. I think that in addition to some of the things that the governor mentioned, we also have made a request in order to get a traffic unit, and the chief can speak more about that in terms of being able to deal with some of the issues that we have. Guns and drugs do move through vehicles, and I think that a greater collaboration and partnering with the state police in that effort could be beneficial for us. I appreciate the participation of the other federal agencies, the FBI, ATF, and the U.S. Attorney's Office. This is going to require collaboration amongst our respective agencies, state and local and federal. But this is also going to require the participation of our communities. We need to continue our partnerships with our community residents. The reason we were successful in year over year in bringing down our shootings and our homicides had a lot to do with our residents participating with our law enforcement in terms of cooperation. We encourage our community to do that. We will be working and amping up our efforts with the community to do that. And I think that if we return to a fully staffed shooting task force, the way that we had a while back, that we can have a more targeted and stronger effort to bring down the homicides in the capital city. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll report to you on what we actually proposed to the governor, and they've been very gracious, all the state agencies, to include the federal agencies that were at the meeting today. We've had conversations going back and forth with our federal agencies for quite some time now. We're actually seeing stress, and it's stress and crime that go in cycles over the years, ladies and gentlemen. We've seen a large uptick in our homicides. We've also seen a 25 to 30% increase in our non-fatal shootings. And we want to intercede before it gets any worse. So what we've asked for is to return to our shooting task force model from 2011. And during that model, we encouraged all state agencies and our federal agencies to get away from these silos and to blend their resources. And it's costly for all those agencies also. But for the common good, the good of our citizens, and as the mayor mentioned, our crime transcends our city and town lines. It also transcends our state lines, and that's where some of our federal partners come into it, besides the drugs, the guns, to control the violence. So in the ask to the mayor, the governor, we've asked for additional troopers to be embedded with our shooting task force, and that actually occurred Saturday evening and Sunday. And it, I will tell you, it produced some results almost immediately. They found some witnesses for one of the shootings. They also found a name of one of the shooters. So without revealing the details of that case, I will say it's already paid dividends. With the Department of Probation, that's a connection that we need. Even though those officers cannot go on the street, we need to know our probationers. We need to know where they are in the city. We need to know how they're supervised and at what level they're supervised. Parole. Parole is an intricate part, and that falls under the Department of Correction. And Commissioner Semple has been very, very generous to us, not only with technology, but for some parole absconders and contributing his officers to be embedded with the shooting task force. We've asked the state attorney's office and the office of the chief state's attorney's office, which I originally came from, when this idea came back in 2011, for additional inspectors. To include a prosecutor, and that's coordinated through our federal level also. The FBI also has detectives assigned to it. DEA also has my detectives. We've opened up some new conversations with ATF regarding particular folks carrying guns. Now, I know, Jeff, you had a question about a uniform presence, and I do want to say I've asked for a late request from the Connecticut State Police to involve their traffic unit, my traffic units, and my uniformed community service officers. Basic premise that we've seen over the years, and it's probably since drugs and guns came around to police work. Guns and drugs move in motor vehicles. So we are going to have somewhat of a uniform presence. But folks, let me tell you, this is a precision movement. It is not a it's not a movement we're going to sweep up corners, mass arrests. It's precision. We know that 1% that are involved in our violent crime, and they cause anywhere from 75 to 80% of our violent crime in our city, that 1% that just don't get the message. So we're going to give them a message. It's leave your guns at home, stop your shooting, and I am going to have send some people to jail, not only for the rest of their life, but for substantial portions of their life. We can't have these folks harming innocent victims or other victims in our city. So with that, for the mayor and myself, questions?
Do you feel that your department is hampered by the fact that you're short-staffed? Would you like to see more officers, and when can we see a graduating class and replenish some of those vacancies?
Well, I think every chief in the United States would want more and more and more, and I'm just like every other chief. So what we did initially for the spike in violence, we had a huge visibility effort on our part to put our uniforms out there, put our police cars out there, to make it known that we are out there. As far as recruiting, we're beginning to recruit. We have 150 officers that we're going to need to hire within the next 3 to 5 years, and we have 18 solid recruits still in the academy that are scheduled to come out in October, and we do plan additional classes as we get going. It's going to be quite the endeavor.
I guess to follow up on that, Mr. Mayor, you've talked about, I think you said if we get back to the staffing levels of the shooting task force in 2011, that would go a long way to stop homicides. Though the task force comes in after they've been committed, right? How much of this do you see as a staffing problem, knowing that you don't have enough guys, men and women, on patrol, that you have a lot of overtime, that you aren't where you need to be? This is according to the own report that you guys have issued.
Well, I think the chief spoke to about having gone through the process of staffing up by way of overtime in order to compensate for the reduction in actual uniformed officers in the force. But what we're talking about is staffing up a strategic, tactical effort that we know has been proven to lead to results in terms of a reduction. So that's what we're trying to accomplish now. And I think that the response that we've gotten from the state and from the federal authorities is that they're willing to provide that additional assistance.
Mr. Mayor, is it possible to hire an additional 150 officers in the next 3 to 5 years?
That is a challenge that the chief and I have spoken about, and we're undergoing.
budgetary issue.
It's a budgetary issue, and it's also a recruitment issue, and it's an organizational issue that we have to address, and the chief can speak more to that.
Is that achievable? You think?
It's certainly our goal. It includes a lot of working parts there, too. Includes HR, includes recruitment. It addresses how we want our police force to look, representative of our population in Hartford. So there's a lot of moving parts in there. But yes, I do want to have that goal achieved.
How did we get to this point then when we're talking about the need for 150 police officers in 3 to 5 years that people at home might be like,
And
wow.
I think the chief has spoken about the challenges, number one, of creating something that the community wants, which is not only a sufficient number of officers, but also a diverse police force. We've seen issues in different parts of the country where that is something that is required in modern day policing. You need diversity. You need a police officer that is trained to deal with the challenges of what it takes to police. Secondly, we have an issue of budgeting. We are constrained, so there's going to need to be, moving forward, significant conversations about how do we pay for the additional officers that we would need. So that's another conversation. And as you know, over the years, whether it's between council and the mayor, or whether it's between the mayor and the state in terms of the resourcing, in order to be able to have the resources to hire a sufficient number of officers, that will be an ongoing conversation. But our goal is to aim towards recruiting and hiring a sufficient number of officers so that all of the community policing model could be in place.
And is there anything, like I asked the governor, that you can attribute this spike in violence to? And shouldn't we know already through Project Longevity who these violent individuals are in the city? Haven't we already identified them and given them opportunities to?
Okay, so you have a couple questions in there. We drilled down about where these crimes occur. They occurred in some unusual areas for us, New Park Avenue, Gilman, even at a club this weekend where it's most heavily staffed. So we drilled down on that. We've also seen some unusual types of motives. Like the governor mentioned, this is at a drop of a hat why somebody would shoot somebody, which is difficult to understand from our perspective, but it appears that it occurs in our city. So Project Longevity is a mapping of that 1% that we call GMI folks, gang or group member involved. And that's a message that we deliver them personally, not only in call-ins, but in customized visits to their home with a police officer, somebody from the social side, and a reverend. So that's unique. So we're seeing what we call the 20-somethings here for a lot of our shooters. We're seeing that group that are 25 to 30 that we were thought that are starting to age out of the violence business, and it appears that they're not. They're still involved. So they're a challenge to us.
Anything further? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.